Welcome to the Drone Chat podcast. I'm your host, Shane Adamson. In this, our first episode, we have 4 guests: Jessica Cully, Peter Gibson, Meg Kummerow, and Michael Fawcett. Don't forget you can email us anytime on dronechat@safedroningaustralia.com.au with any suggestions or questions you may have. Now let's take off to this episode. Okay, we're now chatting with Jessica Cully, who has her own business and is involved in the drone industry, but is also the administrator on a number of Facebook groups. So we're going to talk to Jessica about her story and the Facebook groups. Morning, Jessica.
Good morning, Shane. How are you?
I'm really well, and yourself?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Lovely weather.
It is, isn't it? Okay, so briefly, what's the Jessica Cully story?
Okay, well, I don't do anything briefly, but I'll give it a go for you. As you know, I talk the hind legs off a deaf donkey, especially when it comes to droning. But basically, okay, me. I was a nurse for 30 years, and I got into drones about 5 years ago while I was still nursing, because I was thinking about becoming a real estate photographer, and part of that was you need to do aerial shots. So I had a chat with some people who were doing it locally, and they were doing it with helicopters, and they said they were quite difficult to learn to fly, and it did look quite tricky. So I had a little look online to see what else was about there, and found drones. So bought my first Phantom 1 and crashed it on day one, obviously, as you do. I watched all the YouTube videos on how to fly the thing, and it still just took off, and I had to run through gardens and collect it from about 10 houses down, where it landed very beautifully underneath a palm tree. I was so lucky. Anyway, so that was my first day on my first drone. So it was a big learning curve then. I joined a Facebook group called the DJI Owners of Australia. There were 20 members. I now help run that group. We now have, I think, 18,000, just over 18,000 members.
18,000.
Yeah, we've grown quite a lot in the last 5 years. In fact, over Christmas this year, we grew. It slowed down a bit now, but over Christmas we were growing by 300 members a week.
Wow.
So it's a big group now. In the early days, it was quite small, and we had a guy on there called Darren Reichel, who was my saving grace in teaching me how to all the things that I was doing wrong. We also had Rafi. Actually, other people call him Rafi, but that sounds very posh to me. Rafi Mendy, who runs Rise Above Aerials in Sydney, and he was fantastic, because honestly, I kept getting trouble with the drone. It would do this, it would do that, and they just helped me to the ends of the earth. They were always there for me, helping me out. And so as I got more confident in what I was doing with the drone, the guy who started the group, called Johnny Johnson, said, I need some help running the group. It's getting bigger. And I said, look, I don't mind giving back, because people have given so much to me. Sorry, that was my computer pinging. And I said, I'll help. So basically, then I started helping with the group, and it sort of went from there. We brought on a lot more administrators now to help, people like Neil Hargreaves, who is our legal expert with all things. He's extremely knowledgeable when it comes to the regulations. He's got a legal background. And we've got Gary Anderson, he's a pilot as well, and he knows the ins and outs of the regulations and things like that. We've got a few other admins on there now. The lovely Diana Champion, who's very level-headed, and so we've got a few of us. Darren's obviously there as an administrator as well now, and there are a few others there that sort of helping out run the page. And our primary function with the page has been about promoting safe drone flying, and trying to encourage encourage, lots of creativity with photographs and videos and things like that, but sticking within the rules. And that's been quite important to us from the beginning, really. So I also run Fly Like a Girl, which is just a very small Facebook page. I think we've got about 180 members, and we set that up because some women were a bit intimidated to actually join a big Facebook group, and they wanted a space to hang out and just ask questions that they might get laughed at for on a bigger page. So we've got that. I'm also involved in Brisbane Drone Flyers, which Phil Dunabin, who's another admin on the DJI page, has set up satellite groups. So there's Perth Drone Flyers, Melbourne Drone Flyers, Sydney Drone Flyers, Gold Coast Drone Flyers, Brisbane Drone Flyers. I'm trying to think of the other one, Adelaide, and I think I did Perth already. So I think those are his groups. So I help out with the Brisbane side of things. I have my own photography page called Down to Earth Photography, and I do real estate work, but I don't do much of it. I do it for my husband, who's a real estate agent, and another agent locally, and that's it really.
Okay.
Sorry, I told you it would be long.
No, that's good. That we know who Jessica is now, and that's important. You mentioned that the idea of the Facebook groups is not only to help and support, but to answer questions and that sort of thing. Do you find that there's sometimes a little bit of confusion as far as the rules and regulations are concerned?
All the time. Absolutely all the time. And the thing is with the regulations is they are confusing because they're written in aviation speak. And for those of us who were something in a prior life before we became drone flyers, or just flying for fun, we don't know what the aviation speak means a lot of the time. I think the rules, they do leave a bit to common sense. Like land, if you see another plane, well, how far away has the plane got to be? If you're in an orange area on the Can I Fly There app, how far away has that plane got to be? So common sense comes into it. But there is no statistics to help with how far away do I need to be from this aeroplane. I think aviation speak would like you 1.5 kilometers away, but how can you tell what 1.5 kilometers is? The 30 meter rule, how can you tell what 30 meters is? And frequently asked, well, I was 30 meters above them, that's 30 meters away. That comes up very, very frequently. The rules are sometimes difficult to interpret, and also there is a feeling that maybe some of them are a bit outdated and need bringing into where we're at now. The rules seem to be playing catch up to the technology. So
yeah, I think that's always going to be a bit of a problem, isn't it? Because technology always seems to go at 1,000 kilometres an hour, and we're always sort of just walking along trying to catch up with it.
Absolutely. I don't envy the regulators at all. It must be an incredibly difficult job to try and get the balance right. The problems arise when people interpret them how they want to interpret them. I think if you need to apply a healthy dose of common sense to the regulations.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
To make them viable and to make them work.
Yes. Okay. So hopefully you're going to be a regular on our podcast. If I was to say to you, can you give me 5 subjects that you think or you would like to see discussed here on Drone Chat, and why you want those 5 subjects discussed, what would they be? Right.
I would love to see an in-depth discussion on each single point of the regulations. So the 30-metre rule and how to make it work in real-life situations. That sort of thing is I think, really important to help people out, especially people coming into this, because it is a bit of a minefield. To explain practically how to make it work, how to make, from a point of view of, line of sight, how to work out what your line of sight is. And I know CASA are going to bring in some more specific guidelines about this later in the year, and I think that will help. So things like that would be really useful on a practical level to work out how to make it doable. I think you could go through each one of them, and that would be really, really good. Basic maintenance of your drone, some basic how to keep it in best shape, talking about batteries, battery storage, how to charge it effectively, maybe some really, really practical demonstrations of how to do an IMU calibration, things like that. How to work out the app would be lovely. I know this isn't all safety, but actually when you sort of drag it back, it is about safety.
I agree with you, definitely.
So that sort of thing would be really good. How many have I given you? That's probably only 2, isn't it?
Yeah, you've got 3 to go. Come on.
I've got 3 to go. Safety. Yeah, this is difficult. Let me think about it and get back to you.
Okay, that sounds like a plan.
The regulations for me, to go through the regulations would be really, really, really useful. And basic maintenance, things like that.
I was chatting with someone.
Weather. Talk about the weather, because there are a lot of storm chasers amongst us, and it's quite nice to, have which weather situations it's safe to drone in and which ones it's not.
Okay,
I've got 3.
You've done well. You've done well. Now, oddly enough, I was chatting with someone very recently, and they mentioned JSAs.
Yeah.
Now, were you originally aware what a JSA was when you first?
No. Absolutely not. I wouldn't have had a clue what a JSA was. Before I did my REPL, like I said, I was a nurse. We didn't have to do job safety assessments before I suppose in your head maybe you do, but you don't have to do that sort of thing ever. I've never heard of it before. Risk assessment, I'm just like, if it's dodgy, don't do it, probably. That was as much as my knowledge. So I think that many, many people, I don't think it's just me that I'm stupid. I think there are many people who would not know what a JSA was. I had when I first before I did my REPL, someone said to me, you'll be needing to do a JSA. And I'm like, well, I don't know what that means. So I think there will be a lot of people in a similar situation, and particularly your sub 2 kg operators who are commercial operators. They've ticked a few boxes with CASA. They've had no real training. They wouldn't know to do that. Some may, if they've worked in, I don't know, construction or somewhere else. Do you do it in construction? I don't know.
Yeah. This is right. I think this is a common problem, and this is probably why some people come a little bit unstuck or cop criticism for what they may have done or what they may have filmed with their drone, because it is perhaps obvious to a licensed operator that it isn't exactly kosher what they've done. And it's not that they've intentionally done it, it's just that they weren't aware that what they were doing or how they were doing it wasn't the way to do it.
Absolutely agree. Yeah, so JSA, a talk through a JSA would be fantastic. About what you put down. Now I do them on a regular basis. I actually quite like doing them, because it, rather than just picking up the drone and going out, I fill in my JSA before, and it clarifies in your mind what you're going to do. Like, the site that you're going to go to, where you're going to take off, because you've already worked all that out before you've even got there. Google Maps is brilliant for that sort of thing, because I do some real estate photography. So I'll look on Google Maps first, have a look at the area, and decide where can I safely take off, where am I going to land if something goes pear-shaped, like, I don't know, a small child runs out of a house and starts, where am I going to land safely if unexpected events happen. And so it is really useful to plan ahead of how you're going to do it, what you're going to do it, what your parameters are for weather. You know, am I going to take off in 40 kilometre an hour winds? Probably not. So, you know, I'm going to put all that information, and it just reminds you to do all your checks. Checklists would be good too, actually. Safe Droning Australia, lovely checklist. You could make one.
It's funny you should mention that. We are currently working on that.
Fantastic, because that when you first become a drone operator, remembering to do everything is an issue. And I did have one on my Phantom 1 and my Phantom 2 hanging off, a little pocket-sized one hanging off with just a basic checklist, turn this on, turn that on, make sure this is done. So that would be something that would be quite useful to go through a checklist of what to do.
Well, thank you for your time, Jessica. We've got some subjects to go and look at and come back in future podcasts. Just before we go, what are the names of the various Facebook groups that you're part of and you would recommend to anybody getting involved in drones to follow and be a part of?
Okay, so we have the DJI Owners of Australia. I'm also involved in Fly Like a Girl, and then there are all the satellite groups that run by Phil. And some of us from the DJI group are involved in those as well. So we have Brisbane Drone Flyers, Adelaide Drone Flyers, Perth Drone Flyers. I'm trying to think, Sydney and Melbourne.
All right. Well, again, thank you for coming on, Jessica. I do appreciate your time, and I look forward to chatting with you in the future.
I'm sure we will have many chats, and I'll try and keep them as brief as I can because hind legs, deaf donkey.
Thanks, Jessica. Bye for now.
You're welcome. Thanks, Shane. Bye.
Up next, I'm chatting with Peter Gibson from the Civil Aviation Safety Authority. Hello, Peter, and welcome.
G'day, how are you?
I'm well. Now, what actually is your position at CASA, please?
I'm the media manager essentially for the Civil Aviation Safety Authority, so I talk to journalists right around Australia about everything to do with aviation safety. So that goes from our safety oversight of the big airlines, you know, Qantas, right down to people flying small aircraft commercially, small aircraft privately, ultralights, ballooning, all sorts of sports aviation, and of course, very importantly, remotely piloted aircraft systems, which we all know and love as drones. So I do spend quite a bit of my time talking to the media and indeed the general public about drones, about drone safety, about the drone safety rules, and the sorts of things we're doing. So this is a great opportunity to get our messages across about drone safety, and of course the lots and lots of things we are doing actively in the drone space.
Okay, what do you think would be the 5 top things that we need to address in the remote piloted aircraft systems at the moment, and briefly for what reasons you feel we need to address these various subjects?
Well, of course, coming from the aviation safety regulator, naturally my answer is going to be safety. There are the safety rules themselves, which we need. Everyone flying drones, whether you're flying as a certified drone operator or as a under 2 kilogram commercial operator, or just flying recreationally for fun, you must know the rules. And then, of course, there's the sorts of things we do to support you flying your drone, such as the Can I Fly There app, the Drone Flyer website. And then fourthly, there are the things we're about to do. So there are things like compulsory drone registration, which is coming, drone accreditation, which is coming. And fifthly, we've got lots more we are doing in the space of drone safety education and information. So Why that's all important? Well, I think it's, self-evident, I would hope, that if you're flying a drone, you are sharing the skies with other aircraft, and just like other aircraft, there are safety responsibilities you have. Safety responsibilities to other people in the air, so to aeroplanes, helicopters, but also safety responsibilities to everyone on the ground. So I hope we can use these podcasts to expand on that, get some messages across, listen to people's issues, concerns, questions, and get a good safety dialogue going.
Peter, look, I want to thank you for your time today. Do very much appreciate your input, and I am certainly looking forward to, as I'm sure our listeners will be, to having you on as a regular chat to keep us all informed and keep us all safe in flying our drones.
Look forward to it, absolutely.
Great, Peter. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm now chatting with Meg Kummerow from Fly the Farm. How are you going, Meg?
Yeah, I'm great, thanks, Shane, and thanks for having me on your podcast.
Thank you for agreeing to come on. It's a pleasure to have you on. Now, tell me a little about the Meg story.
Yeah, sure. So my background is completely and utterly in agriculture. So I grew up on a beef cattle property in the central Burnett. I attended Ag College in Dalby. I got accepted into university twice, but it wasn't really my cup of tea. I mean, my thing is always, I've been about helping farmers and being on the same side as farmers, and, getting into agribusiness wasn't really where I saw myself. So Ag College was the perfect fit. I married a cotton grower here on the Darling Downs, and that's where we've ended up. My work is now, aside from the drones, is predominantly in the grains industry here in Queensland. So that's my very brief background is, cattle and grains.
Okay then. So from a perspective of drones and our podcast called Drone Chat, what sort of things would you like to see discussed as subjects or information that we need to get out there?
Yeah, sure. Look, I think, this is a really great format of getting a lot of information out there in a really brief and concise way. I think there's lots of opportunity for keeping people up to date with legislation, as well as, getting into technical subjects. So, from my perspective, we could look at things like aerial spraying by drone, the importance of keeping agronomists in the loop when it comes to drone imagery and, where the agronomists and the farmers fit into the thing, as well as, what do farmers need to know when it comes to utilising drones on their own farm and for their own personal use. There's some really, brief topics that I think could be very well covered in a format like this.
Okay, so I'm going to throw a few specific questions and ideas at you, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. How important do you think UAVs and drones are to the agricultural industry now?
Look, I think it's a growing, there's certainly a growing interest. I tend to kind of stay away from the idea that they are a key component of agriculture, because there's so much technology out there. I certainly think that, they definitely have their place, and, when used in the right format, they can be a very powerful tool. But, we also need to keep in mind that Australian agriculture is very, very vast, and, the areas that need to be covered at this point in time, that's difficult with drones. Like when you're talking, large broadacre properties in Western Australia or Western Queensland, we're talking paddocks that can be a couple of thousand hectares in size. Something like a drone isn't going to be able to cover that in a timely fashion. Whereas, for those kinds of jobs, I think possibly you're better off starting with satellites and then going down to the drones to get the more in-depth imagery in certain areas where there's an issue. But certainly, I guess my work is, mainly in the cropping aspect these days. So, that's where I'll talk from for this. That's, drones, are important, but, I think we need to be really sure that we're not we don't have blinkers on and think that drones are the only thing that'll work.
So basically, they'll be just another tool in the toolbox, so to speak, for farmers to work their land and adapt as required.
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you think that farmers are going to be using the drones and the software and that sort of thing themselves, or are they going to be looking for operators to do that for them?
I think there'll be a little bit of both. So, we're told as farmers that we need to be sharing our story. So, getting across to the end consumer just what we do on farm. So I think, for those kinds of things, a drone can be very powerful in, particularly with certain range of products. You can do live streams through to Facebook and stuff. So when you're out harvesting or if you're out mustering, you can be sharing what you're seeing. As well as, there's always a time when, say after a flood event, it's really easy to get a drone up or, after or during a flood event to see what's going on, to see where water's flowing, to see what damage is around. And, something that you don't want to be having to wait a couple of days for somebody to come in and do some work. I think that there is a place for drones in that aspect. But when it comes to the more, for example, in cropping, when it comes to NDVI imagery, getting those plant health checks, I think there is a place for people to come in and provide those services. So, it's not an enormous cost to a farmer. They don't have to spend time figuring out how all this is going to work. If they can have someone come in and say, look, we need to get something done on this area of the paddock with, multispectral, then it's a saving for them. They're not having to worry about the capturing and processing the data. And keeping in mind, me personally, I think it's really important that farmers retain ownership of that data. That's really important for me. So I think definitely both sides. It's really good for farmers to have one for themselves, for some of that really easy stuff. But then for the more advanced stuff, I think the getting people in to capture that imagery for them is pretty important.
Okay, Meg. Look, I was wondering, you mentioned earlier about using drones in agriculture, and you mentioned spraying crops. What role do you see for drones with spraying crops?
Yeah, sure. So I think it's really early days when it comes to aerial spraying by drone, and there's a raft of things that operators who want to get into that space need to keep in mind when it comes to doing providing such services. At this point in time, there aren't I don't think there's any systems out there that would match manned aircraft when it comes to being able to cover what needs to be covered in a timely manner. I mean, and that's the key thing is timeliness. Like if you have a pest in your cotton crop, for instance, you need it to be dealt with within a pretty short period of time. Within a day or two of your agronomist coming to you and saying, look, we've got an issue. To the plane getting over your paddock, it needs to be dealt with pretty quickly, and I just don't see at this stage that the drones are able to have that coverage in that timely fashion. There's also issues, with, one of the big issues in the spraying industry is ensuring that we don't have off-target spray drift, and I just don't think, unless people have come from a background of spraying, I just don't think that there's enough knowledge about these types of issues. And just, if you combine drones, which are already a pretty touchy subject, with aerial spraying, I really think that we're treading on thin ice when it comes to probably issues that could arise.
Do you think that in time that might change, or do you not see that as ever being a strong role for drones?
Look, they'll definitely have their place, and over time, I think that it will be overcome. Both the timeliness and coverage as drones become larger and things like that. The off-target spray drift is an ongoing issue for all industries. So whether that's ground application or aerial application, it's an ongoing issue. Despite the fact that there's been lots of work done and everybody knows that it's an issue, we still have these problems. So that's unfortunately a problem that will never go away, I don't see.
All righty. Well, Meg, thanks for your time. I do appreciate you coming on. with
Yeah,
us
no,
today.
that's fine. Look, I really appreciate it. And, I really think that this will be a really great format for people to learn about the Australian drone industry.
Well, thank you. And look, we intend to have questions emailed into us from people listening to our drone chat. So I'm hoping that this won't be the one and only chat we have. I hope we'll have a few more in the future, and I hope to be able to come up with some questions for you to answer for all our listeners.
Yep, fantastic. I really look forward to it. I hope it does get some people thinking.
Meg, again, thanks very much for your time. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.
So I'm chatting now with Michael Fawcett from Drone Operator. How are you going, Michael?
Good, Shane. How about yourself?
Yeah, pretty good, thanks. Now, I want to chat to you a little bit about yourself, your website, Drone Operator. When did you go live?
Drone Operator went live in mid-2018. I recently had a bit of a test run of a couple of other sites around and found maybe this could be done a little bit better with a little bit more, I suppose, to give back to the operators, and came up with the model of Drone Operator. We've had pretty consistent sign-ups from then till now, and we've nearly hit the 100 mark. So, no, it's going well.
Oh, that's good. So what makes Drone Operator different from the other directories?
Drone Operator is a place for operators to list their business and get some exposure through direct web links that the directory forms. The simple and effective listings can also lift our members' Google ranking through external links. So they'll get free, basically, links to their website. Members can also get the best value out of Drone Operator by becoming a part of the Facebook group, which is where we list most of the freelance jobs. The main big difference with Drone Operator is that operators can list for free. So there's no cost at all for a drone operator to have a listing on the website. It's basically.
Well, that's a great idea. That's a great benefit for an operator who's just starting out. I think that's terrific. Okay, have you had any negative feedback with your directory going live?
Oh, look, we have had a few comments, Shane, basically about these directories causing a race to the bottom. We do recognise that, and all of our freelance inquiries are vetted prior to getting put through in the system. So we wouldn't be putting any spam requests through. In fact, most of the jobs we've had come through have required REOC and REPL because they were near airports. There's always going to be these issues with the directors around. They're around, and I think they're around for good. Drone Operator just offers part with no financial commitment. Look, you get access to some good member benefits that we've got. There's no other directories, from what I understand, that offer member benefits without any financial commitment. So we've got really good feedback from some clients that have actually been able to contact the operator because they had a listing on Drone Operator. Their Google optimization obviously wasn't quite up to scratch, and the Drone Operator listing came right up. So I do think we're starting to see some movement on Google, and it's definitely benefiting our clients and customers.
Well, that's great news. That's another added bonus for someone who's just starting out. Well, what are your plans for Drone Operator in the future?
Look, we've got some premium services that we're going to release. One of these is automatic client emails. So as soon as a freelance request comes through the system and it has been approved, it can be sent straight to the operator's inbox. Look, and it differs to other directories in that all industries for each state will come through for $9.95 a month. I know it could get quite costly on some of the other directories if you wanted to receive, say, a real estate, a mapping, agriculture, and some other different industry requests. So that's sort of one of our premium services. There's other things like having your background image on the site and stuff like that. But this is all sort of stuff that will start to filter through once we start our client marketing, which we're hoping to start in mid-2019. So that's where we'll be aiming to get client freelance job requests come through the system. Currently, we've just been building the operator base. And yeah, like I said, we're getting to a stage where we can sort of start to cover most of Australia. So it's good.
Okay, now I just want to talk to you about the cost there that you've said, because you're saying the premium side of things, when you launch it later in the year, is going to be $9.95 per state per month.
Yep.
So that means you can list yourself. So I could list myself, for example, I'm based here in Toowoomba in Queensland. I can list myself with you for $9.95 a month across all of the different categories or industry types that drones and UAVs are used for the whole of the state.
Yes.
You know, that's a pretty good thing, because I do know there are other platforms out there where you get a listing for a basic fee, and that sort of only covers you for a certain number of industries, but it only covers you for like your geographical postcode area. If you want to add other areas to your state, you get charged extra every time you add another sort of region within that state.
Yeah, so Shane, ours, like I said, ours is a simple system that basically, if you're an operator in Victoria and an inquiry comes through in Victoria and you have subscribed to that premium service, you'll get the emails from every industry. So we've got a very different model to most of the other directories out there, and look, once we start to see some of these freelance jobs come through, I do hope that some of the members will take it up, but they don't need to. We've got a Facebook group that we update every 72 hours with the jobs, so they can just use the system for free if they wish.
Okay. So are there any other benefits to the people who go for the free service with you?
Yeah, look, we've been lucky enough through Facebook and some other connections to get some really good benefits for free. If you're a member of Drone Operator, there's a few of our partners which you can see on the right hand side of every listing, so you can check them out. I'll just quickly go through them. We've got 10% off through remoteoperator.com.au, so that's an REOC applications done online. We've got another good one through Foxtech FPV, which is a company based in China. They do make some really cool UAV gear, and you can get 5% off any products through them. We also have 5% off orders less than $225 through Safe Droning Australia, which most people will know if they're listening to this podcast. So we thank Shane for that as well.
Pleasure.
And we've also got 5% off recreational drones through Integral Drones, and we also, our recommended service provider is FPV Australia. So if you're looking for training, or any of our clients are, that's who we push those guys towards. So there's some good membership benefits for pretty much no commitment at all. You just need to have an active listing on the directory, and you can then get access to those great discounts and services.
Well, that's really good, Michael. Look, I think what you're doing there is good. I mean, you're providing a good basic service for an operator, particularly someone who's perhaps just starting out. And then as they grow, they can afford to grow with you, and for a small fee, get the extra benefit of the jobs being emailed directly to them for a very, very reasonable cost. I think that is fantastic. And I mean, yes, Safe Trading Australia is offering our support to you with that discount offer. But I mean, this is really what it's all about, isn't it? It's all of us who are in the industry working together to help each other where we can and how we can.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm an operator myself, Shane, as you're aware, and recently got a Crystal Sky display with the Mavic 2, and as we all know, it's pretty hard to mount the Crystal Sky to the Mavic 2, so quickly designed up a 3D print of the Crystal Sky Mavic 2 mount, and yeah, if you need the file to print those out yourself, it's on the Drone Operator Facebook page. Look, and that's the sort of thing we're about. I know as a startup with running a drone business, you do need all the help you can get getting your name out there, and that's a big part of why I built the website. Look, we also want to offer the bigger, well-known companies free listings as well. We don't discriminate there. It's just whoever wants to sign up, as long as their core business is operating a drone, we're happy to offer our free listings to them.
Oh, that's excellent. Well, listen, Michael, I've enjoyed having a chat with you, but before I let you go, I'm going to throw a question at you and see whether you can come up with a few suggestions and ideas for me. Do you have any suggestions on topics or guests you would like to hear on Drone Chat?
Look, I personally, from my agricultural droning background, I'd like to, I suppose, see if we could talk to Agriculture Victoria and just get some confirmation on where we're at with spraying drones. So using drones to target spot weed areas that are in hard to reach, unsafe areas. So currently the only drone in Victoria you can use to spray commercially with is the Yamaha RMAX, which is quite a large helicopter style and still requires 3 or 4 operators. And at $90,000, it's out of reach of most standard sort of businesses these days. So I've had a lot of inquiries from farmers and people that want to attack weeds that they just can't get to on the quad bikes or even choppers and airplanes. It's too hard to get. So that's definitely something that I'd be keen to hear more about. And yeah, look, hopefully we can get some movement eventually, because I could see there is an opening there. I think Queensland, the rules are a bit different and it's starting to pick up a bit up there. So it'd be good to be able to follow suit.
Yeah, look, it's funny you should actually raise that particular point. I was in Melbourne for the Avalon Air Show this year. I was fortunate enough to be invited down by somebody we both know, and that's John Fleming from FPV Australia. And I was there to obviously try and make contact with some of the customers we already have at Safe Trading Australia and get our name out there. But in a chat with John, he was talking about a DJI drone that is starting to be used for spot spraying, like you said, in either difficult areas or just small areas that need a little bit of spot spraying and is too cost prohibitive to use conventional crop dusting aircraft or helicopters. And he was saying that it obviously, apart from getting certified on the particular drone, because it has I think it's got a total lift capacity of about 25 kilos, so you would need to get an endorsement more than likely on your REPL for that, and obviously then get it added to your REOC. But he was saying that because each state is different with chemical spraying legislation, that you've got to go to each state individually and go through a process of getting certified in chemical handling and chemical spraying. And he mentioned that it is possible to do it reasonably easy in New South Wales, for example. I believe it's a one-day course that you do with the Department of Environmental Services. You do this one-day course and then you're a certified handler of chemicals, and then you're able then to disperse the chemicals from this particular drone after you've gone through the process of getting it included in your REOC with CASA. So there are certainly interesting things starting to happen in the industry in all sorts of areas, and this is why I want to keep Drone Chat going and get people like yourselves on regularly so we find out what's changing where and which state, and then obviously perhaps use that to help other states as a bit of a leverage to get the same benefits happening.
Yeah, agree.
Michael, thank you very much for your time. I do very much appreciate it. So I thank you for your time, and I hope to have you back again in the not-too-distant future.
Glad to be on, Shane, and look forward to chatting again.
Thanks, Mike. Bye for now. Before you go, each month around the 15th, there will be a new episode. However, an extra episode will be available in a few days where I chat with Brad Mason from the ACUO about member feedback on CASA's accreditation and registration scheme. This will be a must listen to hear their views. Follow us on Facebook or subscribe for news about Drone Chat. Well, that's it for this episode, and I hope you enjoyed Drone Chat, brought to you by Safe Droning Australia, your online safety equipment store. Email us any suggestions on topics, guests, or questions you may have to dronechat@safedroningaustralia.com.au. Until next time, I'm Shane Adamson. Safe and happy flying, everyone.